Hello, welcome to my channel. So I want to talk about a good topic. I just had my first class actually, and I went, I've got to discuss this. I've only got a short amount of time, so I won't be on here long. But I hope you're doing really well. Catfishing came up. We were talking about criminal policies, and how sometimes media can influence a law change. So, for example, in Victoria, we've got the one-punch manslaughter rule that's coming, and like the new home invasion rule that has occurred because of things have happened. The interesting thing about this is that I was really surprised to learn that catfishing, there's no law against catfishing. And so there is a big discussion, particularly in New South Wales. There was a crime that occurred in New South Wales, but there is a discussion about whether there needs to be a catfishing law. Now, this case I'm going to talk about has a sad outcome. Hello, the fox. The person who was catfished ended up committing suicide, and so, but the coroner ended up saying there's no scope in the law to charge the person who did the catfishing. So I want to put it out there to all the smarties. So we're going to look at the news article, and then we're going to look at the coroner's report, just briefly. But look, I'd be interested to see what you all think. Remember, this is trigger warning. This is sensitive because somebody's now not with us. So coroner slams. I'll have to look that up, the fox. She just mentioned it. I'll have to just look that up. But apparently there's a new home invasion law, particularly if you're home and your house is invaded, apparently. So this is coroner slams lie catfish over 20-year-old's suicide. So this is a tragic story. A coroner slammed the pack of lies told by a woman who catfished her best friend. She catfished her best friend. New South Wales Deputy State Coroner found the actions caused the hurt and heartache, which led to the victim taking her own life. She deliberately catfished by masquerading as an adoring prison lover so she could manipulate her for her own romantic desires. She told numerous lies and had lied to the police and lied to the family of the dead woman. The lies had amplified the pain of the family, and that her lack of cooperation resulted in further torment of the family's suffering. This person posed as jail inmate Braden Spadiri, ended the relationship. She took her own life. Miss Truscott said Zeldin exacted her ultimate revenge by making Braden break Renee's heart after Renee severed her long-time friendship. Camilla knew that terminating the relationship would leave Renee devastated. She said Renee had a strong connection and deep love and was prepared to wait for Braden's release from prison, and truly believed Braden was real and that they would marry. So the victim was a trained hairdresser and receptionist, and on the 5th of August 2013 took her own life, and they've never found her remains. So she died. So the coroner said, I find that Renee Marsden died of fatal fall injuries after she deliberately slipped from the cliffs after the termination of a relationship with a person whose identity was fabricated and created for the purposes of exercising control and coercion over her by a known person. Ms. Truscott told the inquest that into Miss Marsden's death on Wednesday that a violent and possessive Camilla Zeldin had created a fake boyfriend so she could control her. She rejected Zeldin's claim that Miss Marsden knew Spadiri was fake and that the pair had concocted the phantom lover to hide a secret relationship. And then she said further that Zeldin had taunted the mother, that she was unhappy at home. So the made-up character was a purported Goulburn Correctional Centre prisoner and communicated via text and Facebook on a specifically bought back BlackBerry. Braden was supposedly a graduate of an exclusive King school and set to take over his wealthy father's multimillionaire construction business. Though Renee never met Braden, she remained besotted with him, and a relationship with Braden ended when Renee hoped he was getting out of jail so he'd meet and marry her. So that was the plan over the 2 years, that this relationship would result in marriage. So after Braden ended a romance with Miss Marsden, Miss Truscott said Renee got dressed, put on makeup, drove to the Gap, and wrote on the window of her car that she loved Braden. After placing her shoes neatly in a gun turret, she sent 3 messages from the cliff top, threw her phone off the cliff, and then shortly thereafter herself. She said Camilla Zeldin had gone out with Renee's mother, Teresa, to look for missing Renee, and the pair had driven to a house where she claimed the sister of the fictitious Braden lived. Miss Truscott said Camilla had claimed she and Renee invented the Braden story together to hide a secret lesbian relationship between the 2 women, but there's no evidence of that. Renee believed Braden was real. They had engaged in an intimate relationship, which included phone, even though they hadn't met. Despite a friend telling Renee Braden was not real, and a boyfriend showing Braden and Camilla's messages had the same punctuation and grammar, she insisted he was real. She read out a series of messages to Renee from Braden's Badiri, aka Camilla Zeldin, which showed a sophisticated and lengthy campaign of manipulation. Miss Truscott said Camilla, masqueraded as Braden, had orchestrated the deception so she would not longer have men, including Renee's 2 fiancés, as competition. Camilla freed herself of jealousy and possessiveness she felt by Renee by being in a relationship with a man. She no needed to complete with one of Renee's boyfriends. She could exercise coercion and control Renee as Braden. Police investigating telephone records found that Braden's Badiri did not exist. Camilla assumed that the identity of Braden using SMS and Facebook engaged Renee in an intimate relationship for 2 years. Whenever Camilla went on holidays, it became difficult to keep up the alter ego. Braden would be out of touch for different reasons, including having an operation. She said on September 2012, it was unclear whether Camilla had become enmeshed with Braden's identity because Camilla's mental health deteriorated. Less than 2 months before she died, Renee confided in Braden she was ending her friendship with Camilla. Prior to this, whenever Renee had suggested it was ending, she was ending it, Camilla, as Braden would argue against it. But finally, Renee told Braden, I'm over it. I don't want a friend like that. Miss Truscott said Renee, at that moment, little did she know the beginning of the end of her relationship with Braden. She said the intense relationship between Braden and Renee included Facebook messages and 11,000 text messages between March and June 2013 alone. Miss Marsden took her own life after receiving the text the same day from Braden saying, I think I need a break, and so do you. Her internet search history in the weeks before her death included websites for bridal dresses and photographers. Spiteri told her he was serving time in Goulburn jail over a fatal motorbike accident in which his friends died. Photos of the person purporting to be Braden showed a smiling man with a six-pack with whom Renee became besotted. The court heard Renee went with Camilla to Bondi Inc. and had B. Spiteri tattooed on her chest, and that she'd bought a prepaid phone for him to use in prison so she could keep in touch. Because mobile phones were prohibited in jail, Braden said he could only contact her by text or Facebook, so no one would ever hear him speaking on the illegal phone. Moments before she took her own life, she sent her mother, Teresa, a heartbreaking text. I'm sorry for everything and the pain I will cause you now. When you need to talk to me, just call my name. I'll be there. Renee's mother had told her daughter that Braden was rude and arrogant and it was not a good relationship for her. In August 2012, Renee had learnt from Braden that he was possibly going to be released from jail. The next she ended up in hospital after an overdose, telling her mother the relationship had ended and was happy to be alive. In 2013, Renee became involved with engaged briefly with a work colleague named Ian, but when Ian gave Renee an ultimatum to choose between him and Braden, she chose the latter. The court heard that she was still friends with Camilla, but there was evidence Renee experienced abuse from Camilla, including physical abuse. She's not been charged with any offence, was subpoenaed to give evidence at the inquest. They were close friends at high school and had been in a relationship, and they were only friends. On the day she died, Renee was shaken and crying and told a work colleague, Joseph, that her boyfriend, Braden, was being blunt. Phone records reveal 92 text messages were exchanged between Renee and Braden, but Renee only showed Joseph the message in which he asked for them to take a break as a couple. Renee left work early, called the Goulburn prison, but could not get through to Braden. When she got home, Braden had texted her mother saying, "Sort your daughter out, she's thinking of killing herself." When Teresa asked if this was true, Renee said, "Don't be stupid, I'd never do that. Mum, you don't need to worry about him anymore. Mum, it's all over." Before her death, Renee sent final texts to her mother, Braden, and Camilla. After Miss Marston learned of her daughter's death, she sent texts to Braden saying, "I want answers now," but received no reply. Camilla told Teresa that Braden had spoken to her and he was upset people were blaming him. So that when Camilla testified after being subpoenaed to the inquest, she would not condone the creation or perpetuation of Braden and was done with the knowledge of Renee. So it's interesting that her best friend is blaming the person that can't speak for herself. Ms. Trescott said, although catfishing was not an offence in itself under the Crimes Act, it was unclear if the crime of using a carriage service to menace, harass, or offend applied in this case. That offence carries the maximum penalty of 3 years. She said catfishing was a deception offence wherein a person created an identity which could be used for abuse, fraud, or romantic purposes. Ms. Trescott said Renee Marsden took her own life as a result of someone who doesn't exist, and the community would expect some response to that. In formal recommendations, Ms. Trescott said the New South Wales Domestic Violence Death Review team should conduct an in-depth review of the case. Ms. Trescott said one of Renee's boyfriends had described her as a very happy and bubbly, glass-half-full person. She said Camilla showed obsessive traits when Renee was going out with that boyfriend and followed her. On one such occasion, Renee had told her she didn't want the friendship to continue. The court heard Teresa Marsden had to physically intervene as Camilla pleaded, "You don't mean it, you don't mean it." So members have attended every sitting of the hearing. So here's the question. So catfishing doesn't fit in a... Hello, Bella. Catfishing doesn't fit... Well, as the coroner said, catfishing itself is not an offence under the Crimes Act. But could there be a charge under using a carriage service to menace? However, it was a deception offence. Now, the lecturer that I just had in criminal law said that she actually was asked to write a paper on this very thing, whether and there is a discussion in place about making catfishing a law in itself. However, then you've got the deception. It could be deception, and it could be using a carriage service for menace. So it could also fall under different aspects of law, and that is what part of what I'm learning is about law policy, whether they need to redefine a law or add to the deception law to include catfishing, or whether they need a new catfishing law. So it's very interesting, but I'd not heard of this case, but it is a tragic case. And I've got the coroner's report here. It's 53 pages long. So I'm just wondering whether there were any thoughts on that. And is catfishing illegal in other parts of the world? Do we know? So in the coroner's report, the coroner has looked at, so this is the inquest, this is the coroner's report. So it talks about the evidence of inquest. So down here, I've just pulled this up. Why would Camilla catfish Renee? The evidence demonstrates that Camilla's motive was likely not so that she could harass or intimidate Renee, but rather so that she could keep Renee for herself to the exclusion of all others. The evidence contained in the brief establishes that Renee preferred being in a relationship with men and that she did not want to be in a relationship with Camilla, but wanted to be her best friend. Camilla was unable to tolerate Renee as having an intimate relationship. She would become jealous, possessive, and abusive. Though Camilla denied this in evidence, there is no challenge to the tender of any witness statements without being called for cross-examination. Camilla stepped back from saying that those witness statements were not truthful. In any event, the carriage service communications established that Camilla had poor emotional regulation and was manipulative and abusive. Renee did not want to be in a relationship with Camilla. I mean, I don't know whether then it comes under coercion. By catfishing Renee, Camilla could have some type of intimate relationship she wanted with Renee, as well as an ongoing friendship with her. Renee was sexually intimate with Braden, including phone sex, sending him videos and photographs. Text messages Renee sent to Braden demonstrates her frustration and disappointment that Braden would not send videos and photographs of him. So it was all one-sided. It was all one-sided. Renee and Camilla's the content of many Facebook and text messages demonstrate that Renee believed Braden to be real and that she was not together with Camilla. Bye-bye. Indeed, Renee believed Camilla had been going out with Braden in 2011, and in May 2012, Renee was on Facebook messaging a man called Martin, who she was supporting whilst he was trying to date Camilla. So again, that's really interesting. So Camilla didn't want Renee dating anybody, but she was okay. She was dating other guys as well. We're talking about catfishing, and just a case that I was made aware of in my first class today, about a young lady that was catfished that took her own life, and how there is a gap in the law that catfishing in itself in New South Wales is not an offence itself. However, could it fall under other? The evidence demonstrates that having Renee in a relationship with Braden, Camilla freed herself from experiencing the jealousy and possessiveness she would feel whenever Renee was in a relationship with a man. By being Braden, Camilla experienced an intimate relationship with Renee, despite Renee being unaware of this occurring. Renee spent more time as a friend with Camilla because Camilla's behaviour had improved, as she no longer needed to compete against one of Renee's boyfriends, and she did not need to break them up. From Renee's perspective, hi, Christine. It could fall under deception. The coroner has said that it could fall under deception. So this is one of the discussions we're actually going to have in our lecture, whether it needs to be added to the deception of fraud law, or whether it's a new law on its own. So from Renee's perspective, Camilla had been finally able to accept that Renee was in love with someone else, so she could retain some type of friendship with her, though it was marked by a degree of instability and abuse. It also could fall under, could it fall under domestic violence as well? If Camilla was catfishing Renee, she was doing so to exercise coercion and controlling both aspects of Renee's life, as Braden's girlfriend and as Camilla's best friend. So then you've got coercion as well. See the complication for law. This is where we go. This is what part of the unit is. See the complication for lawmakers. It could fall into so many aspects of law. So then that's the history of their relationship. So this is some of the text here. Some of the history. So this is the coroner's report. It's 58 pages. So telephone records. It could take some time to work out. Well, that's why That's why they're doing a law review. That's why they've asked. They're asking criminal lawyers and experts and academics to to I guess debate and argue about it, because even in our own class on our first day, we all had sort of different ideas as to what it could be. You know, the new one punch law that came into Victoria, which is one punch manslaughter, it can't be murder because there's no intent. But could there be intent? So, you know, it gets really messy, these new laws. So yeah, so it could. So this is the thing for governments, is whether they set up a new law to just deal with catfishing, or whether and then where does it fall under? We know that the coroner says that there's no offence for catfishing. However, it could fall under deception, because there was deception, there was coercion, there was coercion, and so it all comes to a head when Renee chooses to. She doesn't want to be friends with Camilla anymore, so Camilla breaks it off. Camilla breaks it off with Renee as Braden. So then that's text messages. Sort your daughter out. She's threatening to kill herself, says Braden. Texts Renee. Please explain to me why a young woman will not want to kill herself. Ask her yourself. Braden texts Renee. Maybe explain to me why you never got her help last time. The mother. Have you ever thought that you are the problem? Seems like it all comes back to your feet. I got her help, looks like. So there was text between Braden and Renee's mum. And then I think one of the worst parts about this story, or the tragic story, is that there were the lies afterwards. That she lied to the mother that she hadn't heard from Renee. And then she lied to police. She didn't cooperate with police. So there was all of that. Has she got away with, from what I understand, is that there's been no charges put against Camilla for this. So at the end of the day, Renee really believed that Braden was real. What about Charles? Yeah. So remember, she called the Goulburn prison. She was prepared to marry. She was prepared to get married to him. So she'd written to the Greek Consulate General to ascertain whether a person with a criminal conviction could get a visa to go to Greece. She told people that she and Braden would marry in secret because her parents would not support it. She booked an appointment with a wedding photographer. She kept sending Braden bride and groom photos. She did some counselling with Braden over the fact that he was in jail due to a motorcycle accident, which was all made up, of course. Renee text said, do you ever wonder how strange it is that we have never met, but we have this inseparable love for each other? So it's really quite concerning. So then you've got telephone records. So as I said, at the end of the day, we know that at the end of the day, she went, as we heard, she went to the Gap, Cliff in Sydney. So I said she put her shoes. That's really weird. And she threw her phone off the ledge and then jumped off her leg. So these were the findings. There is no evidence, if anything, Renee learnt from her 90-second telephone call to Goulburn Police. So if she could speak to a prisoner by telephone, she would have been told that was not possible. If she asked if she could leave a message, she may have been put through to welfare to leave a message. If she'd asked if they had a prisoner called Braden Spaderi in the prison, she may have been told no such prisoner was there. If she'd asked if he'd been released, she may have been told that there was no prisoner by that such name. I doubt she asked these questions. I've considered whether Renee learnt that Braden was not real and that she learnt that she had been catfished by her best friend Camilla. I am of the view that she did not know this. Camilla did not tell her because she's unable to admit of having engaged such an appalling conduct involving such a betrayal and trust of a friend. Though I do not accept that Camilla accidentally deleted Renee's last text message to her, I do not think that it said anything other than what Camilla said it is. Camilla was unable to answer the question of how this was all going to end. Camilla could have returned from America and let Braden disappear into thin air from which he came. Camilla did not contact Renee and suggest that they end their fiction because Renee was not part of the fiction. Camilla did not contact Renee because Renee had ended their friendship by text and confirmed it by not attending soccer. By August 5, 2013, she displayed a deplorable lack of kindness to Renee's family by the lies she told and continued seeking to cast blame upon them for Renee's unhappiness. Likewise, in her evidence in the inquest, Camilla did not make any attempt to give them the answers they sought. I can only hope this inquest has given them some degree of comfort, and Renee's experience is documented and understood. Renee had her whole life to look forward to, and it ended. I offer my condolences to Renee's family and friends. So we know that after considering all of the documentary evidence and oral evidence given, I'm able to confirm the death occurred and make the following findings. So this is the findings. Manner of death. So she deliberately slipped from the cliff top with the intent of ending her life after the termination of a relationship with a person whose identity and intent were, unbeknown to her, fabricated. So these are her recommendations. Renee's family are seeking to have a discrete and distinct criminalisation of the conduct called catfishing. I hope these findings provide some support and assistance in that regard. There are complex matters which were not canvassed at the inquest, which we need to take into account before any coronial recommendation involving the introduction of criminal legislation. Accordingly, I do make the following legislation. So Renee's family are wanting catfishing criminal, making it illegal. So on the 24th of March 2020, the Domestic Violence Death Review report was tabled in both houses of Parliament. Recommendation 9 of that report is the Department of Communities and Justice examine the extent to which existing New South Wales laws respond adequately to non-physical forms of domestic and family violence and to patterns rather than incidences of violence. This examination should include a quantitative review conducted with New South Wales Police about what forms of behaviour are being targeted under the offence of stalking or intimidation, whether such charges are laid on their own or in combination of other offences, and the relationship and context to other offences, monitoring the progress and implementation of offences of coercion, control, and domestic abuse in other jurisdictions. She could actually be, because she was coercing, it was a coercion at the end. The monitoring and progress of implementation of offences of coercion control in other jurisdictions relate to a widening of the definition of domestic and personal violence, which would capture the conduct Camilla engaged in by catfishing Renee, but the laws are not currently implemented in New South Wales, though through this recommendation are being considered. Renee's case should be included and considered to inform the Department of Communities and Justice examination. So it looks like the coroner has put in for a recommendation for it to come under DV laws. So that Domestic Violence Death Review team undertake an in-depth review and provide that review to the Department of Community and Justice to inform any action to the progress report. And that was in 2020. That was 2 years ago, and I don't think that there's been any, from my understanding, there's still no progress on that. So what do you think? Should it come under a different law Should they widen existing laws, or should they bring in a blanket law that if you catfish, I mean, or what do you think? The other thing is concerning someone who is clearly mentally ill, not getting the help they need. Yes. So, I mean, you could probably argue they would probably argue that Camilla was mentally ill. So what thought they should so Bella thinks there should be a new law. We could just solve the problem here. Hey, we could just like go, yep, we've decided. YouTube. Oh. No, it doesn't need to be physical. That's correct. So, the Fox, there was a Crimes Amendment Act in 2016 called the Carjacking and Home Invasion Act. Apparently, so I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit more because I don't really know much about it. I just know that there was some new laws passed on that. So, yeah, I'm going to have to head off soon because I've got to go have my ultrasound, which I'm not looking forward to. Yeah. And I've had to drink a liter of water. No. So, yes, just very interesting. So, thoughts, what's everyone's thoughts? So, Bella thought that there should be a new law. But as far as I know, there's been no charges laid. And there's been some videos done on this. Yeah. There's been a whole pile that you can find YouTube videos on, which I'm going to be interested to see. I actually haven't looked at any of it yet. I just pulled up the coroner's report. Yeah. Might have some more GoFund pages later today, not run by Dutton. Interesting. Now, the thing let's talk about Dutton just for a few more minutes, right? Why has the mainstream media been so quiet on the Friendly Geordies expose? Why? Why has the government? Why has there been no media intention? Don't people want to know what's happening? Yes, and Victoria and in Victoria, you can't say that you were provoked. New South Wales apparently still has that law, but under very strict circumstances. But Victoria, you can't have that. You can't say that you were provoked in murder. Which all this stuff I've learned in one sitting. Oh. And also the majority of people, this is what the lecturer said. All right, I'm going by the lecturer. She's a professor. I'm assuming she knows. She was saying that a lot of the law is based on people pleading guilty. So most of the people that turn up in front of a judge will plead guilty, because in most cases they will get a lighter sentence if they plead guilty, because ultimately they're guilty. If cases go on and on and on, then generally there is an element of doubt in whether they are or not, which I thought was very, very interesting. That's what she said. Particularly, she's only really talking about Victorian law because that's where we live. But yeah, talking about mainly Victorian law. So anyway, that's what I've learned. I told you we're going to do law lessons. You're going to learn with me. Yeah. So, but no, she mentioned that case because as one that she has had been asked to consult on as a criminal law academic, and so we had a bit of a discussion about it, whether or not we could slot it in under other laws or whether we needed to have a whole new law, and that is the whole point of the law review committee that occurs in each of the states, is that they go and they consult with lawyers, they consult with victims, they consult with everybody, and then put recommendations to the government. We'll learn together. Yes, we will learn together. So we'll find some interesting cases. But that one because I have to say, I really didn't know much about catfishing. I didn't think that it really happened in Australia, but that really surprised me that it did. So anyway, on that note, I have to head off. Thank you for joining me. I will catch you again soon. I've got my first lecture. I've got a lecture on double jeopardy later. Woohoo! Double jeopardy law. And I've just had an introduction into criminal law. So I think next week I'm looking at murder. So and the interesting thing is that even murder's been expanded, and manslaughter has been expanded. So even like assault, and it used to be really black or white. You either murdered somebody or you didn't murder somebody. Now, if you don't murder, it's manslaughter, and then you've got aggravated, and then you've got this, and then you've got that. They all fit under little levels. There's different levels of them all now. So yeah, and the other thing is that everybody is going to be able to learn, some of the Australian law, but mainly Victorian law. We'll be all experts on law. Jeopardy was a good kids show back in the day. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me. As I said, just want to come on quickly, but yeah. So for that, if you have a think about it later, you make sure you put some comments below and tell me what you think about catfishing. Should it be a separate law, or should it be put under the domestic violence law, or should it be under coercion or fraud or deception? Where do you think it would go if you were making the law? That's what I'd like to know, because as I said, we don't have any catfishing laws at this stage, as far as I know. In New South Wales in 2020, when this report was done, there was nothing, and they're still reviewing and looking at that, so there's still no laws in place. But anyway, I hope you have a good day. Bye for now.